oh, look at that, like, white girl, like, look at the thing on her teeth. She has metal on her teeth. She looks like a lion. And they said it in
Oh.
Ga. And they thought I
Mm-hmm.
didn't understand. So they said that, and I'm still walking. I'm like, oh my God, these guys.
Thanks, guys, for tuning in once again to Time with Steven. I'm so excited for this episode. If you haven't subscribed yet, kindly click on the subscribe button and share with your friends and family to help this channel grow. On today's episode, I have with me Edna from Canada. You may have seen her videos go viral of her speaking the Ghana language, which is one of the local dialects we have in Ghana. Without much ado, help me welcome Edna to the show. Hi, Edna.
Hi, how's it going?
It's going great. How are you? And how's
Oh,
Canada?
I'm good. God's grace. I'm in Calgary, so it's very, very, very sunny as always.
Oh, really?
So I'll take it. Yeah, it's very, very good weather right now. So, you know,
Nice, nice.
managing it before winter comes. So
Oh, okay. We would like to know you. We've seen your videos go viral, and it's of you speaking the Ghana language, as I said earlier on. I
mm,
mean, to let our viewers know you are capable, not just some one or two interesting phrases you've learned. I'd like to switch to the local dialects to have a feel of what you can say. Or Tete, like Miniano.
oh, drama song, drama song. I mean, no yeah, no chunk. I mean,
Okay, yeah, that's your
yeah.
Obeshi.
When like in June or if it's all like if you only have few, but get away it drove away. Sometimes you have to be and it has an immobile feel.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But no yeah, no chunk, no yeah, no chunk.
Okay, yeah, no, chum. Or like many ni ochu ni mini of your Essien.
Oh, inke in Aslanya no way come ni mami huntra me ni binshi inke mami be few and then in social media no in quanoniano vuole che Israel sanene che mini Paris che le un ame look I didn't go yeah no you like there's a lot of stuff going on so in quite
Okay,
ma canin
all
ma
right.
quanoniano
Nice, nice. Okay, so we're going to switch back to English for the benefits of our viewers.
mm,
You have a very interesting background. You grew up in Canada, but
that's
you're able to speak the Ghana dialect. Like you're able to speak it and speak it so well.
yeah.
Like let's start off growing up. Where were you born in? Where did you grow up?
I was born in Vancouver, BC. That's Canada on the west coast. My mom is mixed, so my mom is half Ghanaian, but she grew up in Ghana. And my dad is full white, so he's Canadian. He has a British Irish background, and
Oh,
so at home, I think what I would say played a major part in like the reason why I can speak is because my mom obviously speaks it very fluently. It's mainly what she was raised with, and my dad is like I would say my dad's very open minded, and he actually encouraged my mom and said that knowing another language is always an asset, no matter what language it is. I know a lot of people say that, with major languages, or they don't see their local like dialect as like a major language, but any language that gives you the capability to be able to communicate with another person, I find is my dad's kind of motto that it's always essential because I think it also gives you another perspective of how to see the world, and my dad also like strongly believes in that. And so when my parents got together and got married and everything, my dad was like, yeah, you need to teach the kids the language. So my dad worked, my mom was at home, and when I had to speak to my mom was very strict about it. I find that a lot of parents today want to speak English or try to like mix the languages. My mom was very strict about it. So when you have to speak with our mom, whether that's me and my siblings, sorry, when we speak with my mom, like she's very direct about it being just solely like the Ghana language. So whether she's going to tell you to do something, or she's threatening you, or telling you to go do chores or whatever it is, any communication, it's
Yeah.
done in Ghana. And when I speak with my dad, I just speak English. Um, with my mom too, I think my mom was also kind of wanting us to learn too. And with her, she's like, when we go to school, when we communicate with our dad, we have to speak English. Like it's a must because that's the only language that we would communicate with everybody else. But with her, like she made it very specific that like we had to speak God with her. And I think that really helped too because at some point she makes this joke, but I used to actually mix both Ga and English together. So the only person that
Mm.
really understood me when I was really young was my mom because my dad doesn't speak Ga like at all. Like
Oh.
he knows like a word or two, like as I like duna ke roro and like the simple little things, but he
Yeah.
doesn't like know any major sentences or elake
Okay.
koketo yote. It's like how are
Mhm.
you kind of thing. But he
Mhm.
didn't actually speak it. And so for my mom, like she was the only person that really truly understood everything I said because I was mixing both languages till I got to a point where now I was like about 2 years old where I was able to kind of differentiate between both languages. And that I feel like really helped because I don't I think there's some when I'm speaking with her, there's some things that I think I can articulate a lot better in Ga than I can in English. And then there's some things too that I articulate better in English than in Ga. So it helps that version where you're not a lot of people in their head they translate both languages. Like if they learn another
Mhm.
language, they
Yeah.
find the need to translate, like for example, if it's Ga, they translate like the English into Ga and then say it. Where I don't
Yeah.
have that issue that I have to like think about what I'm
Mm.
saying. It's more of like, oh, this is what this means. This is what this means before I actually like fully articulate that, oh, like this is what this would mean in this language and this is what this would mean in this language kind of thing. But yeah, like my mom was very strict about that. And so growing up, like all my siblings, we all speak Ghana, we all articulated very well. And I think it even got to a point where I felt bad for my dad because sometimes we do have discussions where it's just like full on Ghana. And then my dad would come in
Wow.
and my dad's like, oh, like what's being said, like he wants to be a part of the conversation. But because as much as we do translate languages, it's never fully translated in the full meaning of what it should mean. So even
Mhm.
when we are kind of explain what's being said, like some of the insults, for example, in like God, don't make sense in English at all,
Yeah. At
right?
all.
So when you say, oh, this person said this, it's like he's looking at you like, okay, and so it never like he kind of missed out on that aspect. But I
Yeah.
think with being bilingual, like it was like I felt like it was a lot of fun because there's some things if I wanted to tell my mom something I didn't want my dad to know, like there was that. And then with my dad it's like as much I love my dad of course, but there was just some things that it was just easier, and it made my childhood fun because of that aspect of just knowing a language that he didn't, kind of thing you know
Yeah. Okay, so you grew up in Canada,
Yeah.
and at what age did you first visit Ghana?
um oh, that's a good question. Honestly, I can't tell you the earliest memory, but like with my mom, for example, like my mom went every year, every 2 years. So from
Okay.
when I was really young, from when I would say the earliest memory is when I was like 2. Like I have photos of when I'm in Ghana wearing like the traditional outfits and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Um, and like being in Ghana with my aunties and my cousins, and my mom threw parties and stuff like that. So we've been going to Ghana like practically my whole life, and we go every year or two. The
Okay.
longest we've maybe ever stayed away from Ghana would be maybe 4 or 5 years, like one time. But usually it's like every year or so we do go. So I
Mm.
definitely do have like strong roots, and I definitely do have like a close relationship with like my cousins and stuff back home.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
would you say traveling back and forth like made your dialect a bit better? Because in Canada, you'd only communicate in Ghana with your mom. Was there like any other close family relations you were, practicing your language skills with?
Um, I think because my mom was so strict about it, like it didn't because I'm usually with my mom, you know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah.
Especially at that young age, you don't start going to school till you're 5 years old. You go to
Okay.
kindergarten here was what they call it, kindergarten. So with my mom, like my mom worked from home, so I'm always with my mom. So I think
Okay.
that was like part of it. I feel like at some point, like I said, I used to mix the languages, so my God was stronger at that time than before when I was going to school.
Yeah.
And I would say, like, I do think it gave me another perspective and it made me appreciate knowing the language. I
Mhm.
don't know if I can fully say that going to Ghana back and forth is what made my Ghana better, but um, I think like at a young age knowing the language because I was with my mom so much, that's why it was as as clean as it is even now.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. So how many siblings have you, and do they also are they as fluent as you in the Ghana language?
I have a younger brother. My younger
Okay.
brother is me Canada. I think a lot of people do actually know him. 10
Mhm.
years, well, it's been a while, but when he was a kid, we actually did, he posted a video about Choco, talking about Choco. So
Yeah.
a lot of people do actually know him. If they don't know him by name, they know him by face because once you see
Yeah.
him, you know it's him. And my older brother does also speak Ga. So I would say my
Mhm.
younger brother is the best speaking Ga speaker out of
Wow.
all of us. Uh, like he actually is able to tell you proverbs in Ga. Like I feel like with him, yeah.
Wow.
So and I think it helped because when he's the youngest, right? So all of us also speak Ga. It's a lot easier to pick up on the language and actually improve it than
Yeah.
when I was born. There's fewer people in the house, so yeah, but he's I don't know if today I can say that, but when we were kids, definitely my younger brother was definitely the better Ga speaker.
Okay.
Yeah.
So growing up in Canada, I mean, as a mixed race, well, what were some of the challenges you had to go through?
Um, that's a good question. A lot of people don't actually know I'm mixed race. I think even today, people
Hmm.
still don't know because when
Wow.
you look at me, I don't
Hmm.
really. I look. A lot of people say I look Greek. I look like that Middle Eastern area. So like
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Greek, Italian, Spanish,
Hmm.
middle like a lot of people said I look Egyptian, Israeli, that
Hmm.
area.
Yeah.
So a lot of people don't know, they just assume unless you actually hear me speak on the phone or talk to my mom or like somewhere I'm speaking to someone that actually speaks the language and they know that I speak the language. That's when like people actually realize, oh, you're actually mixed race. They automatically just assume just based off my looks that I'm like Middle Eastern or Brazilian or some sort of country that has like dark features,
Hmm.
facial features. And so I didn't really get a lot of I don't have a lot to speak on in terms of like having that mixed race, like, or some of the challenges that might come with it, apart from the fact that like I feel like there's a lot of assumptions that you have to choose a side. Like me being like Ghanaian and Canadian, like that I have to automatically choose one culture over the other. And I don't,
Hmm.
my parents never made it a thing, and I don't really make it a thing because I find that, especially living in Canada, like there's so many different cultures that you go to
Yeah.
school with. So I went to school with like Chinese, and I went to school with East Indians, and I went to school with Filipinos, and with blacks and with whites. And so when you see other races around you, I don't feel that there's like that need to have to pick one, because you can do
Hmm.
so many things, and there's just so many mixed race couples, and so there's not really that need to feel that you have to choose one over the other,
Hmm.
or that pressure to like choose one over the other. And I embrace who I am. I mean, there are advantages and disadvantages to both cultures in terms of like the way we perceive life and how we do life together.
Hmm.
And you just try to make the best out of it, and and do life, so in terms of challenges, I would say, yeah, the only challenge is sometimes there are individuals that try to like box you in and say that you need to pick one, like, oh, do you prefer being Ghanaian over Canadian, or do you prefer to live in Canada over Ghana, or they try to like kind of make it seem as if you're one thing over another thing, and I don't see
Hmm.
the need to do that.
Okay. So, but where in particular, like in Ghana, does your mom come from?
So my mom
Yeah.
is my great grandfather is a Dangbe, and my
Okay.
great grandmother is a Ga. So they're like, but my mom mainly grew up in Mamprobi. My
Okay.
grandmother grew up in Tema, and then they shortly moved over into Mamprobi. So my mom mainly grew up in Mamprobi. She went to school in Dansoma,
Mhm.
and that's kind of like a lot of the Ga speakers. And so my mom speaks Ga very fluently and kind of understands and speaks a little bit of other languages like Ewe and like Dangbe and stuff. She understands it, but she can't speak it very fluently.
Oh, nice.
Hmm.
Okay, so when you first went to Ghana, I mean, you went at earlier stage, but
Hmm.
when you had a realization like the adulthood and you went to Ghana, how were you received?
Um, I think I'm received as any other kind of like tourist in a sense, like, oh,
Mhm.
the songs are saying like, oh, Brony Coco Machi, like, those things.
Yeah,
And like they call me Obroni.
already.
Yeah, and like my family, I mean, my family is my family, so like usually they do tease me that like, oh, you're white and stuff, but uh
Mhm.
Ghana is always a I've always seen Ghana to be a very friendly place, a very open place where they accept people as they are, especially if they're visiting.
Right.
I've When I was a kid, like I still like even to this day I still really love Ghana. Like every time I go, there's just some sort of like peaceful atmosphere. Like it's just you just feel happy. Like there's just some joy that hits you when you enter the country, and
Mhm.
that as much as I mean things are rough for a lot of people living there, they still are content with what they have, and I think that's
Right.
what makes Ghana the country that it is, and a really nice place to like visit.
Right. What's the longest period you've stayed in Ghana?
When I was a teenager, I was in Ghana for about 18 months.
18 months. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So having lived there for like 18 months, did you school in Ghana as well?
I
Or
did. I was in JSS.
oh,
I did term 2 and 3, JSS
okay.
1, and then I did term 1 and 2 again, like for JSS 2. So I was there
Okay.
for a bit. Yeah.
Between these two countries, like which of these countries do you identify most, or you align yourself most to? Do you identify more as Canadian as opposed to Ghanaian? Or
Um, like I said, like I don't feel that I need to box myself in. I feel like there's positive and negative things to both cultures.
Mhm.
With Ghana, like I love going there just because like obviously the food is amazing. And I think again like they have like a contentment with finding joy in the simplest things, like
Yeah,
when football is being played or soccer for some of you that know as soccer, like people are just happy to be able to just go behind one TV and watch with other people and just be happy that their team's winning kind of thing. And there's just joy in simple things where Canada, you there are it's not like that. Like it's a little bit different because here it's like everybody's more concerned about providing for their families, and although there are like sports things going on and stuff, there's the values are different.
yeah,
I feel like there's certain challenges here that like Ghanaians might be going through, but they don't see it as a challenge per se. It's just they're content with what they have. Whereas here it's like I want more kind of thing in Canada. So definitely different perspectives, but I don't choose one over the other. This is how God
okay,
has made me. God knew what He was doing when He put my parents together, and they had me and my brother. So I just take the fact that the mixed race thing, it makes me unique, it makes me different, it gives me a different outlook on life, and I just take what I can, the positives that I see from both cultures, and just you know go along with it.
yeah.
Hmm.
Okay, yeah. Earlier on, you mentioned football, and that's reminded me. I caught a glimpse of a few pictures of you with some of our old legends.
Hmm.
Like Michael Essien. Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
how did you get in touch with all these people? Is that are you related to any of the footballers?
I'm related to one, but I don't think I have a photo that I've like put up with them. But what happened was that during 2006 when we first qualified for the World Cup, me and my family are very big about like football. We are diehard, or at least at that time we were diehard Chelsea fans, and we really wanted to watch that because we'd watched on TV, but we'd never been in a stadium at that time. And so my mom really wanted to make our dream come true, and she did a few things and put things together, and we flew out to Germany. So right when we finished
Wow.
school, there was one game left, which was the Ghana USA game. That was going to be played in Nuremberg. So my mom put things together. She got tickets for the game, and we flew out to Germany. And we actually have a relative out there, so we went to go stay with them, and then took a train down to Nuremberg. And the hotel that my mom booked, fortunately, was also the same hotel that Black Star had booked, and we're camping at that hotel.
Oh.
So it was funny. Right when we actually had checked in and went to our hotel room, as we were leaving to go get dinner, Michael Essien was also coming on the same floor from another interview he was doing for a series that the World Cup was doing. And we met at the elevator. So I think all of us were kind of, especially me and my siblings, were all freaking out. We're like, oh my God, Michael Essien is standing in front of us. We're speaking Ga. And when we spoke Ga, he was kind of like, looking at us like, oh my God, these kids are speaking Ga. Like, what? And he was kind of a little bit shocked because he's like, wait, how come these white kids are speaking? Ga? So yeah, we met him there. We took a picture, and then I think it was when we were going down, when the elevator opened, he had to go back upstairs to go change. But when the elevator opened for us to go down, then most of the players that were at camp were also going down for dinner too. So we were walking into a full elevator of
Wow.
players. And so we're like, my family, like, we're all freaking out and we're speaking Ga, and they're like, oh my God, these kids speak Ga. So a lot of them actually took our contact, like we kept in touch with them. And Canoate was what I would say that like a lot of them became like very close people that we call family. Even to this day, like I still speak to some of them. They've become like brothers and like older like uncles and stuff like that to us. So
Nice.
it's honestly, yeah, like I would say the gun the gun is what really opened that door. But I feel like it was, I don't believe in coincidences. I really do believe that it was God, and that everything was orchestrated the way it was. It's too the way things went, it would be a sin to call it a coincidence. You know what I mean? It just seemed that everything just at the opportune time, everything just lined up, and it would be, yeah, I would feel it would be a shame to call it a coincidence. It wasn't a coincidence. I really felt that it was God. So it's been amazing knowing all of them. Like, they're really great people, and a lot of people that actually speak into my life, even currently, even to today. So God knows what he was doing for sure.
Nice, nice. So you would say having the skill of the language has really helped you. What are some of like the downside, like with this language that you go
Um,
through?
the downside. Ooh,
Yeah.
that's a good question. I don't know if I would say there's a downside. I think sometimes the only one that I can think of off the top of my head is that sometimes people feel that because I speak the Ga, like I understand, um, especially with Ghanaians, I feel that sometimes they mistaken that because I speak Ga, they automatically can become friends with me without kind of getting to know me, or taking the
Okay.
time to get to know me. I think sometimes they force friendship, or it's like, instead of actually them on a regular basis, I think how friendships are formed is that you kind of get to know somebody and you judge their character and you judge the way that they speak and they do things before you make that arrangement that you want to be friends with this person, kind of thing. I think sometimes with the culture with Ghana is like, oh, you meet someone and then you're automatically like, oh, be my friend,
Yeah. Yeah.
instead of actually getting to know somebody, and actually basing that off the type of friendship that you want in your life. And so I've had a lot of that where it's like, oh, Edna, you speak Ga, you're white, like so great, like you should be friends with me. And I'm like, yeah, like, we can be friends, but like, I feel like there isn't that objective or critical thinking in terms of like actually saying like, oh, like I really like that Edna's like this, or I really think that Edna can help me in this way, and this is why I want to be friends with her, instead of just making it based off language, because it's very shallow and very surface level to make that assumption or to want to do that because of like a simple thing as language, for example. So that's just, I would say that's the only downside. But in terms of like, I love speaking Ga. Like people will tell you like, I'd rather speak Ga than English most of the time.
Okay.
And I really like, I feel like that also kind of builds that rapport with people. Like you can actually understand them in a different way than like them speaking English with you. Especially if they have like a Ga background, like they're either like born Gas or like they've also gone to like be in Accra and like learn the culture and stuff like that. It builds a different rapport, and it does actually strengthen the friendship or relationship that you have with that person. So um, I would say like, yeah, it's been beneficial all around. I think for me, like it gives me another perspective of how to see life instead of just it being like, oh, I live in Canada and then my mom's Ghanaian kind of thing. I think there's a certain level or a certain appreciation I have because I speak the language that I wouldn't have if I didn't.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We Ghanaians, like we are known for like gossiping a lot. When especially we see a foreigner, we could easily say one or two things. Like, have you been caught up in situations, especially in Ghana, where people like kind of be gossiping about you, and you go like, "Hey, Charlie, you're
Yeah, I've caught myself in a lot of situations like that, unfortunately. As you said, you know our people, so um I don't think that will ever truly go away. Because I guess I feel like it's built into the DNA. I feel like that's just something that we do, whether you're a Gan or you're an Akan or whatever tribe you're from. Like as long as you're Ghanaian, you do that thing.
Yeah.
So sometimes I find that they like, for me, because of that thing, like I try to um I'm very particular about where I speak the language, because I feel like I have to study my environment first. So a lot of the time when I do pretend like I don't speak the language at first, because I want to see the people's motives and kind of the heart behind like what they're doing, and not be like, oh, you speak Ga, like I shouldn't say this negative thing. I want them to say what's on their heart before I kind of answer anything. So I have found myself in a lot of positions like that. The one in particular that I talk about a lot that's funny to me is I remember 2009, I went to Ghana with my mom, and it was my mom's best friend's mom's 1 year. His mom had passed away, and so we went to go support and be there for the 1 year remembrance. And my mom, you know how Mamprobi is, like the roads are very, very small. It looks like Little Britain.
Yeah.
That's what I call it, Little Britain. And so when you're parking the streets, you have to be very particular in how you park and make sure you're not close to the gutter and stuff like that. And we had parked a little bit far away from the actual family house. So my mom forgot something in the car and she sent me to go get it. On my way there, I went a couple blocks. I think I went about 2 blocks, and I saw that they were playing like football in the middle of the road. Like they blocked it off and they were playing small pools, you know. So they were doing that, and there was 2 older guys, and they saw me, and they're like, at that time I used braces, where it wasn't a big thing in Ghana at the time, and I was wearing some. And so they were like, oh, look at that, like white girl, like look at the thing on her teeth, she has metal on her teeth, she looks like a lion. And they said it in Ghana, and they thought I didn't understand. So they said that, and I'm still walking. I'm like, oh my god, these guys. So I went to go get the bag from my mom's car, and I was walking back, and they're like, oh Brody, come here. And so I answered them. I flipped the language and I answered them. I was like, hey, like I heard what you said about my teeth. I heard you said I look like a lion. You know, this lion teeth are very expensive. And they're like, oh my gosh, come here. back to my mom, and then later on during the event, like when we are doing the ceremony and everything, they came and they begged my mom because I told my mom what happened. And so they begged my mom. They're like, "We're so sorry. We didn't mean to insult your daughter." And they were begging my mom. But you know, like situations like that, it's I feel like it's out of ignorance. It's not because of anything, or I don't think they meant any harm by it, but sometimes
Yeah.
they weren't thinking that, you know, especially nowadays where there's so many mixed cultures and stuff like that, that people get to know the language, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, I still unfortunately I still deal with that to today. It's just a common thing that's among, we like gossiping, we like talking about people when we don't know them, and making unfortunately ignorant comments about them because we feel that they don't
Yeah.
understand the language. But I find that behavior um is slowly changing. Like people are like thinking about it before they do it.
Yeah.
So but it's, yeah, it happens all the time. Honestly, it happens all the time.
Okay. So, what are your plans with this language? Like, do you intend to like start teaching maybe foreigners in, I said like Canadians? You intend like moving back to live for a while in Ghana? Like, what are your plans with the language?
I do have projects that like I'm working towards to do. But for now, I just find that like the big thing that, or the challenge that I find or I see right now is that the Gan language in itself, people don't like to speak it, even if they are from the tribe.
Yeah.
That, and I think Accra in general, because it is the capital of Ghana, like we have other tribes that are coming into the city, but
Yeah.
they don't want to embrace the culture. Like they don't want
Yeah.
to even learn about Ghana culture. And I think there's a lot of stereotypes where they make this assumption, especially that I've heard from Akans personally tell me that, you know, Ghanaians are illiterate. You know, they make those
Wow.
stereotypes that Ghanaians are illiterate, or they're not well educated, or you know, they're usually fishermen, like, you know, the very ignorant like stereotypes. And so because of that, they don't see the need or the want to speak the language. And I think for me, like that's kind of my biggest thing, because I love speaking God. I love that I'm from, that my mom is from Accra, you know, and
Yeah.
I love being able to speak the language and actually express myself in the language. And so for me, when people make ignorant statements like that, I really do want to change that. And I feel like my job right now is kind of to raise awareness, and to kind of tell people that no, it's not, it shouldn't be a thing where you should be ashamed to speak the language. Like I've heard a lot of stories where I think one person was telling me a couple months ago that they go to school at the University of Legon, and some of the Gan students, they don't want the other tribes that are in their class to know they're Gans, because then they feel that they'll be looked down towards, or they'll be treated as less because they're from the Gan tribe. And I'm like, you should be proud. You should walk
All right.
proudly, you know,
That's
because
right.
the fact of the matter is you're actually proving the stereotype wrong, right? The fact that you're
Yeah.
able to go to university and you're able to get your degree and go to class and be like, do the best that you can. And
Definitely.
so for me, I feel like my job right now is to encourage people to want to speak the language, you know, and even for the people that are parents right now and raising kids that, you know, you're from the Gan tribe and you're teaching your kids not to like be ignorant and be like, oh, a lot of the time I hear that they're like, oh, you know, English will open opportunities for them if they speak English. And I'm like, no, that's wrong. You're actually doing your kids a disservice by not teaching the kids the language, because one, it will come to a time where your kids are going to ask you, okay, why can't I speak our language, you know? Or like there's certain things I feel with even culture, if they spoke the language, there's certain things they would understand, whereas if you're telling them in English, it doesn't make sense, you
Yeah.
know. And so I just think that for a lot of people, not just Gan, but like just even speaking your own language in general, to teach your kids and pass on the culture that, hey, this is where you came from. I think identity
Yeah.
is something right now there's a lot of talk around. I think especially with like this LGBTQ that's come through, um, identity is so important. And when you
Yeah.
know where you're from and you know kind of your backgrounds and stuff, you won't get lost. There's
Yeah.
certain foundations and certain perspectives that you'll hold, and that nobody can change that if you know where you're from. But when you don't, you get lost and you find yourself in this weird limbo where you're trying to figure out who you are. But if you already know who you are, there's no need to go through all this rediscovery or certain things that you're trying to figure out on your own, and you find yourself going through unnecessary trials or like challenges where if your parents would have just set that foundation for you,
Yeah.
you don't need to do all that, you know.
Right.
So for me, I just find that my job or my purpose at this point in terms of the language is to encourage people to speak it. Like that's all I can really do. And I do, for me, sometimes I do get discouraged because I find that there is that negative side to it. The downside, I would say the downside to knowing the language
Yeah.
is that a lot of people are like, oh, well, if you speak Ghana, you should speak Chi. And I'm like, my mom isn't, I don't have any Akan background. I don't have any Akan roots. Why would I speak
Yeah.
Chi? Especially if I'm from Accra. Accra is Ghan land. Like, it's not meant for Akans. There's no Akan roots there. You know what I mean? It being a capital city is the reason why there's so many different tribes there, and it's been more multicultural than the rest of Ghana. And so that's where kind of my, I would say the downside is I get a lot of questions like that, and I get a lot of, oh, well, there's more Akan speakers, and like there's more Akan, so there's more tree speakers, so therefore I don't know the language. And or when people applaud me for speaking Ga and me being a different color, people are like, oh, you know, colonialism, you know, we're making white people more important than blacks, and we're lifting up something that shouldn't really be a big deal. And that's, I feel like sometimes it is discouraging because you find like that negative news going around, or that negative comments like that circulating social media, and you're like, is this all worth it, like to go through? But I do get like the few messages here and there where people will come and tell me like, hey, you know what, I saw your video speaking Ghana. I like, now I really want to make sure that my daughter or my son speaks the language, because I see the benefit in it. I want my kids to be able to speak with me and to understand the culture that they come from and stuff like that. And so that's kind of what moves me to like continue to like do that, and to push people like, and ask them the question. You know, some people tell me, oh, I've been in Accra 10 years, but I can't speak Ghana the way you do. And I'm like, okay, why? You know,